Hi, excuse me. Instead, celebrating queer visibility in our respected panelists. And money. Our mind is a leading researcher in Datta, algebra, precision, and language. In the as an Indian member, Alex international law society. He is also interested in gender studies and has taught credit courses in gender and STEM at HSBC at the TFIR Mumbai and is a founder of the admission to an engineering college in Tamil Nadu. Today, she is at the forefront of the anti-caste and trans one of the fiercest voices in trans country. And let me moderate her. She is Sri and
Good afternoon and welcome to today's panel discussion. So I like to start off with a general question to all of you. How do you think your queer identity has shaped your journey? And what has it meant for you to be queer?
Right. Hi everyone. Hello. Are you all sleepy after lunch? I hope not. Okay. First, thanks for the question. I'll answer that just in a bit. But let me first start by thanking Team Varnam for inviting me to be a part of this panel. I'm deeply grateful to be sharing this stage with Professor Mani and Grace, two women who I have learned a lot from, who inspire many of us in the room and hopefully many more beyond. Um, Coming to the question of how my queer identity has shaped my experience instead, um, I think so. Just very briefly about my journey in STEM. So I have an undergraduate degree in life sciences from Presidency University, Calcutta, and a master's in neural and cognitive sciences from the University of Hyderabad. And then I did half a PhD in the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Hyderabad, which I quit to pursue science journalism. A lot of my journalism till date continues to be at intersections of gender, sexuality, caste, and science. And now I teach with my colleague Neha, who's sitting there at the Center for Writing and Pedagogy here in University. Um, the reason why I'm mapping this out is because, as you can see, neuroscience has played a very big role in my scientific journey. And I think part of the reason why that is so, when one reflects back on it, is also because how the history of neuroscience is deeply entangled in very complex ways with the relationship between science and sexuality itself. If you know anything about the history of neuroscience, then you know that one of the biggest controversies in neuroscience has been about finding neurological correlates for certain behavioral traits. So for a very long time, people held the assumption that brains of women are smaller than brains of men. Something that has been debunked several times with several major studies now. So similarly, in the 1990s, when people were trying to find biological correlates for sexuality, one of the very big studies that came from the laboratory of Simon Lavey um, actually found what he's claimed to find a part in the brain that was smaller in homosexual men who had died of AIDS compared with heterosexual men who died with AIDS. And for a long time, this kind of biological essentialism was perpetrated by neuroscience. Now we know very well that a lot of this data is not true, a lot of these findings don't hold. But I think the reason why I have been very interested in the history of neuroscience is because it has helped me how science has come into confrontation with being queer and transgender. Um, and that kind of critical field to neuroscience, something that became very important for me, at least now when in my journalistic practice, when I write about science, gender, and sexuality, I think having that queer experience to look at science, to constantly think about what are the assumptions that science is making, what are the categories that science is taking to be valid without testing the validity of those categories? How are correlates of certain categories being identified? I think a lot of that is that frame has come to me from the experience of being queer and experience of being queer in a discipline that's tried to box queerness or find it in parts of the brain, the gene, the parts of the body. So I think that's where I can stop now. I can pass it on to someone. First of all, I'd like to thank Team Banu and for the great organization. And then, and thanks to Sayantan for making so many nice points. Uh, as far as I'm concerned, I think have always been very independent. And so, uh, shame and awareness is of the natural for me. In fact, I always followed a scientific mindset, always been critical of everything, even of sciences. So, and, that well and transition. And so I would say, yeah, it's in a sense, it's very natural for me. And, of course, from a broader perspective, uh, if one is really scientific, then fairness is probably natural rather than being unnatural or anything like that. And that's what all the studies have actually said. So one has to read critically. For example, if you see Julia Sheridan's book, she has said, she has critically analyzed on a lot of biological essentialism and other things. So I think that's how those two categories are related. Okay, and as far as yeah, that's how it is. And as far as artificial Okay. Yeah, no, it's okay. And as far as artificial intelligence concerned, some of the things that they do, especially in machine learning, they don't take a critical approach at all. And that can be quite dangerous when it comes to STEM and fairness. One can get all kinds of nonsensical results, and they can pass it off as being valid despite yeah, on flimsy grounds. That's how things work in ML actually. You don't really have a good concept of validation. You can validate anything, and nothing generalizes, and most of it is unreliable. That's the current state of machine learning, especially particular versions. Not all of them are like that. For example, things like graph sets and all are far better. They at least try to look at the meaning part. But things like deep learning and these kind of subjects, they don't bother about meaning at all, and that is dangerous. And combined with scientific illiteracy, becomes an even bigger problem. So these are some things that one has to really look out for. And with that, I will pass the microphone to Grace. Yeah. Is that okay? Thank you. Thank you so much. Something, I think this is last year also I got the invitation, but unfortunately, and this year I have a chance. So thank you for inviting me and Sayantan and Professor Banu. Me, STEM and awareness is like starting both are having cars and so uh, because my experience when I tried to get engineering college, so that time the openly denied, I got the denied from the government. Government said they don't have a policy to admit the transfers in the engineering college. So we got like still I have that okay, the trans people doesn't have a rights to like a professional course like uh, MBBS and engineering, and we don't have a rights to like a government examination. So like that, those are their responsibility from the government. And that time I realized, okay, so this science is proving, all the nature and all the people are having rights to live in this world, and this earth is having, all the people have the rights to live in this earth. But these people, the people who are having the science, the power, so those people are denying the opportunity. So we challenge and finally got admission, and even though a lot of discrimination I got faced, but that time I realized, okay, and based on the caste and gender based discrimination. So, so from that point of view, this stems having caste and class privileges. Always people are having caste and class privileges, so those people are only holding those things. But no, we are also having same mind and the same uh, equality. So, so many people should come to use this place to talk about the science and the trans, what is gender identity, what is this, what kind of denial and discrimination is happening here. So now I'm so happy, this kind of platform, talking about all kind of issues, and and a lot of our community people are in this platform to talk about it.
Sayantan and all the people who are working in the academic area, they are creating a lot of space. But still, we don't have a safe space. We are fighting for that. But that should be, when we talk about STEM, that STEM is also be a safe space for us. But mostly, we don't have a safe space. Maybe people should be like you should initiate to create a safe space for all the people, and we should be create a space for not accessing the science and technology for all the people, not only particular group of people. So yeah,
Thank you so much for your insightful answers. And I think a common thread that I was able to find from our answers is that STEM obviously has a lot of way to go. Like inclusivity, whether it be with respect to accessibility or like skew data sets. And then a lot of ways to go. Like, why do you think this happens structurally? Like, what are the structural barriers that exist in STEM today, which is preventing it from being more inclusive?
it's when we create a space, so that should be access for all the people. As I said, people who are having caste and privilege, people only accessing those spaces, and that's not equality, and that should be inclusive. And the people from the rural area, people who are coming from the person with the disability, and people who don't have any kind of privileges, the caste privileges, class privileges. So those people also should be participating in this space. So here it's not happen, and we don't have that kind of spaces here. So that's why all the people are, the people who are denying the opportunity. So we are all like, it should be an inclusive space. It should be a safe space for the person with coming from the person with disability, the person coming from the rural area, the person coming from the underprivileged, the caste, caste background, with the caste. Always this space is holding uh, by uh, 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 people who are having caste and class. So that's not an equality. And that's not no equal space. So that should be for women, particularly women coming from the rural area. And that should be a person with a disability, women also should be participating. And the trans persons who are coming from the rural area, the trans persons who don't have the caste and class. So those people also should be participating. So that is how that is inclusive and that is equality. So that's why we are raising creating space for the future generation. It's not they're all working for not only for us. No, I strongly believe uh, we are creating the space for the future generation. So not only we should be get the benefit, we should be use those benefits. No, not the future generation should be have a safe space. We don't lose those kind of dreams. And I know a lot of trans persons who are very young who committed suicide because of the social discrimination, because of the family discrimination, the domestic abuse they are facing. But they also have a dream to achieve science and to get a space. But last 1 year, uh, particularly in Tamil Nadu, more than 30 trans persons were murdered by the civil society, and very few trans persons have committed suicide. But what about their dreams? So they also want to get education. They also want to dream should become true. So that is why we are all so that is why we are asking. It should be a inclusive space.
I think the whole problem starts with the way we practice them and how we see diversity. And there's actually most practitioners of STEM they don't get any diversity training in the first place. And the subject is not the subjects are not being conceived properly. That can be seen in what is done in education research, especially. And and there's a big need to address that first. And I think inclusion, equality, and equity, all this will follow from there. And we should focus more on how to practice diversity and how to teach because these things are hardly known to most STEM practitioners. And that applies even to institutes like IITs. And so that's a major problem. And I think only then we can try to address as religion and other issues together uh, with the problems of sin and the way it is practiced. I think that is more important.
Yeah. So I think if I were to when one thinks about STEM, I think there are four things that we need to think about as structural issues that limit who can access STEM. Right? So one is the question of nature of STEM itself. So most science, technology, engineering, medicine, mathematics oriented fields work with the assumption that the knowledge they produce is independent of who is producing the knowledge. Right? That's the notion of objectivity, as we all know. What that means is it doesn't matter if I'm doing an experiment or you're doing an experiment. The experiment is done in the same way, whoever be it should generate the same result. The problem with that assumption is that it hides behind it the fact that most practitioners of STEM are actually not diverse at all. STEM has a very homogeneous composition. In the context of India, we are looking at Brahmin, upper caste, cisgender, heterosexual men who are probably the most known, most seen practitioners of STEM. So, what is the question of nature of science itself? And these assumptions that hide certain uh, positions and viewpoints that we are unable to critique. The second is how science is practiced. So think about the fact that if you are a person who requires field work, so if you are let's say a wildlife biologist who spends a lot of time in the field, then has the discipline put into place practices that can enable people of all genders to be on the field. So what are the sanitation facilities that are available? Which becomes very important for women and transgender persons. Do we have field clothing, particular gloves that you wear, suits that you wear, protection equipment that you wear? Do we have them made in ways that are accessible to all genders? Um, so there are practices. So for instance, STEM requires us to work late hours in isolated spaces. So laboratories, for instance, you're working at like 1 o'clock in the night. Are we safe? What are the kind of safety measures that have been put in place? And I'm not just talking about sexual harassment, but I'm talking about being able to access, let's say, menstrual hygiene at that point of time in the night. So there are questions about nature of science. There are questions about the culture of science, and then there are infrastructures of science institutions. I can talk a little bit more about it later, perhaps, but very broadly, the fact that most science institutions continue to follow a very strict binary segregation of gender, in particularly in hostels and in mushrooms, compels transgender, gender non-conforming, and non-binary persons to choose. And this is a very ominous choice. There's no choice. You've been told that you have to use a washroom and stay in a hostel that you do not find yourself comfortable in, but you have to choose between these two options.
and that causes a lot of um, trouble. And of course, there's this internal sense of dysphoria that many transgender persons face when they're put in infrastructures that do not align with assigned gender. And then the fact that they are also becoming more vulnerable to violence, abuse, and harassment in these spaces. And finally, there's the question of curriculum, which is in fact what is taught in STEM classrooms. How are we training new scientists? What are the perspectives that we are teaching? And in biology classrooms, for example, the only time that we encounter the terms intersex or transgender are when we read about things like chromosomal aberrations, abnormalities, right? So we are never talking about gender and sexuality as a diverse, um, I don't know to say spectrum, but let's say a diverse cell of individuals that, um, and we are only always confronting trans and intersex persons in the realm of the abnormal, which perpetuates very homophobic, transphobic tendencies within the practitioner. And some of this actually is not just about gender. If you think about segregation, for instance, same reason segregation just like the absence of gender neutral hospitals or the all gender hospitals tells transgender persons that you're not welcome. Similarly, vegetarian messes tell people from marginalized castes, people from the Northeast, people from so many other cultures in the countries where meat eating is the predominant food choice. Vegetarian messes tell people the same thing. It tells them that you're not welcome. So, I mean, I can come back to this in a while, but what I'm trying to say is that if one looks at practices and culture and natures of STEM, then we find that there are these common threads that run between how STEM discriminates against transgender, CGNB individuals and sex people, but also against people from marginalized castes, people with disabilities. And I think it's time for us to be about what these threads are.
So, Professor Simon, we were talking about how the current infrastructure in STEM kind of propagates, exclusivity, right? So, what do you think can be done from an institutional perspective to make STEM more inclusive, and also from an individual perspective? Also, like to extend this question, Professor Revani, considering past experience and activities.
Um, okay, let me just spend about 2 minutes breaking this quantum infrastructure down a little bit more because the answer is slightly more difficult to get to. What can be done about it? It's the hardest question. I'll try to make a comment on that. But the thing about so think about all the kinds of spaces that you have in a field, right? So we're talking about administrative things, talking about business. You would have some residential spaces which would be of probably three types. You would have residential spaces that are meant spaces that are non-teaching staff and residential spaces that are meant for students, so which would be primarily the student hostels. Then you would have some academic spaces, so you would have the laboratories, the classrooms, etc. Then you would have recreational spaces, football fields, and the gym and all that. Of these, which spaces are gender segregated? Student hostels and some academic spaces and washrooms, at least in the common spaces, right? So you'd actually see that a very small percentage of space in the campus is actually gender segregated, and it looks like those spaces belong to students. And this has a couple of implications. So on the one hand, of course, it's leaving trans GNC GNB people out right away, but it's also conveying some other things to cis heterosexual students, right? So on the one, it is saying that all the sexual harassment that can happen. Because one of the reasons why gender segregation is done allegedly is to prevent sexual harassment against women. That's something that we hear all the time. What it is saying then is that student hostels and washrooms are the only places where sexual harassment happens. And in saying that, actually, this is hiding the fact that so much of sexual harassment happens in laboratories, happens in faculty offices, happens on the roads. I was in the University of Hyderabad where we had some of the most massive amount of security on campus that you can imagine. And this is because the death of Rohit Venkata happened there. And yet, there were rampant cases of sexual abuse and harassment that happened on the very streets of the campus. Securitization had nothing to do with it. The second thing is it actually, this kind of gender segregation educates us into thinking that the only way we can look at somebody from the other sex is through the lens of sexuality. For some reason, it appears that it's impossible for the institution to imagine that I can see a colleague from a different sex or gender as a friend, a sibling, or any other kind of relation. I don't want to limit ourselves to that conversation, but it feels like the only kind of bond that is possible a bond is a bond that is sexual, and a bond that is necessarily heterosexual. Otherwise, you would have to segregate men's hostels between different categories too, and you would have to do that with women's hostels too. Um, so I think the point is here that we do not realize that gender segregation actually has implications not just for transgender persons, but also for cisgender persons. We have some very solid evidence that when students stay in co-ed hospitals, so basically all gender hospitals, they actually cultivate bonds that are less anxiety ridden. They tend to objectify their colleagues much less. And that has implications for the time when you're working with somebody in an isolated space in a laboratory. Instead of looking at that as an opportunity to take advantage, you're actually going to take that as an opportunity to look out for each other. And I think this is a message that we've not been able to convey to the administration that gender non-segregation is not just about trans, GNC, GNP people, it's about everyone on campus. So quickly coming to what can be done about it. What we've been advocating for in the past, there's a couple of contradictory opinions that have come. One is that we institute alternative all gender spaces. What that means is that nobody is saying make every hostel, but institute one hostel that is all gender, that is accessible to people from all genders. Institute couple of hostels in every building that are accessible to all genders, and let people choose whether they want to opt in to these all gender hostels or gender washrooms. I mean, I'm sure on this campus there will be some people who will not be 18 when they come. But by the second year, they will be 18, so shouldn't be in terms of grades. Um, other that we heard uh, actually campuses are unnatural settings. I mean, that is if you actually look at your house, or if you look at things, or if you look at lights, you don't have gender segregated washrooms, you don't have gender segregated rooms. While it appears that the norms of campuses is gender segregated hostels and washrooms, that's not the natural setting that we grew up in. Further, many of us come from very conservative families, and the university as an institution is the time when we learn new ways of living, encounter new. So, an alternative suggestion that's come from several experts is that instead of making this an opt-in question, make it an opt-out question. Let people spend 6 months in gender non-segregated infrastructure and then decide if they are not comfortable with it and move out. But that gives an opportunity for us to interact with each other in a way that we have never been taught. Um, yeah, I think that answers your question. If it does, I pass it. To add to all that, is that one has to look at infrastructure in a broader perspective. One has to see the kind of toxic masculinity that is taught, and these matter a lot. So
we need to have special courses in addition, so that so that any good possibilities can emerge from experiments on gender, non-segregated spaces, and things like that. That is definitely important. One cannot really ignore it, and because one has to take all the stakeholders into account. And apart from that, we need to have a lot more of trans-related, trans trans-related facilities for students and others. For example, trans surgeries take a lot of time, labor, and other stuff. So I think they should have things like special leave and provisions for special leave and facilities similar to what pregnant women get. And that's quite important. And so infrastructure of course involves a lot more than all this. And I think I'll pass the mic on.
For me, it's like the institution uh, uh, should create, as I said, should create a safe space for the queer people, and they should, now a lot of us and a lot of discriminations and violence happen within the campus how to be protected. Uh, we have to, this all happened because of the patriarchy, because people who are abusers, so those all the people are patriarchy people, and we have to educate them how to handle it and and how to uh, first we have to create a manual how to handle queer people, and we have to create a policy within the institution. If any queer persons are facing this kind of discrimination, it should be a punishment. It should be like severe punishment, because this institutions, when we are coming to here to get the education, this kind of violence and this kind of discrimination is we are focusing on education, we are focusing on the research and everything, but this all kind of discriminations, it's divert our focus. So that should be created. The institutions, people should be created a safe space for the queer people who are facing this kind of discrimination. They should take up the against the persons who are doing that. And sentence, the queer people need a safe space, but when we create a separate space, separate thing, that is also unsafe for us. The people who are having patriarchy, and definitely they will come anytime, any way for that. So initially, we should be, as a person, we should be have a safe, and we should be take care of our safe own safe equipment. And secondary, the environment, the persons who are studying those kind of environment should be a safe. The environment who are having that environment and who are creating those kind of environment. The people who are having power, the people, that is institutions, the academic, and whether obviously we are trying to act. The people who are using verbal abuse, physical abuse, and mental abuse. So we should be filed the case against the persons who are tweak that. So like that, each and individual institutions should be created separate policy for the community. How do we protect those kind of students to focusing on, you know, creating that is environment, creating a safe environment for the queer inclusion. So that is initially we have. And three, the family. When we are studying and when we go to get education, definitely we are touching. I don't know. We are with our own family, but within the family also we are facing a lot of violence and discrimination and domestic abuses are happening. So that is also should be tackled, within the family violence. And what else? Persons who don't have family, who left from their family. For example, most of the trans persons they're not living with their family. So how uh, students within the education, this kind of so, so the moral support. So that time government should take care of the in order to take care of those kind of children to create like educational support, uh, staying up the staying most of them are staying separate. So they are it's difficult to manage their rent and everything. So so the government should take the necessary action to how to secure this kind of students. So this all the major thing queer and trans students are facing. So uh, so, so this all we have to create a safe and secure environment for the individuals.
That was very insightful. But outside of academia and educational institutes, especially considering you spent a fair bit of time in the IT industry, how do you think we can change the corporate space, make that more
Yeah. So what states it's like uh, IT and the government. Both states are having unsafe space for the queer individual and the trans individuals. And you know, uh, still now I know a lot of trans persons who are working with the government sector. They face lot of discrimination. Part of the cis people and uh, sometimes the sexual harassment also is happening. But we don't have a space or a separate cell to this kind of discriminations and the violence I'm facing. So so we don't have anybody to tell us. So and within the private sector also a lot of IT companies they are having LGBT and the DNA policy and everything, but just count. Uh, they also have I mean, that space it's occupied by the within the LGB umbrella. Most of the trans doesn't have I mean, they don't have a space to access that space. And the still now the IT field and all the fields have occupied by the cis, gay, and lesbian, yes, allies. So those people only having, using those places. So I know a lot of trans persons who are working in the various IT sectors, and they don't have a protections policy. We have the LGBT policy, that's okay, but discriminations and everything, okay. But how to protect a queer and trans individual employee? So what in case queer and trans individual facing discrimination and harassment, but how do we protect? So I have to tell one incident. Recently it's happened. trans individuals who are working with IT company, and I think you are all hear about that news. Uh, uh, in WhatsApp, some rumors are spreading. Trans persons, a group of trans persons are, kidnapping your children. So beware of that. So near Pallavaram, the public, this group of cis people, they are brutally attack trans person, and that case we handled, and immediately we contact that IT company. Now it's one of the major IT company, what kind of protection we are going to give, and they said, oh, we are going to give 2 weeks leave and the mental health care and everything protection. How do you protect? Okay, they are having some policy and whatever the procedures are there. And how to protect trans individuals? How to protect queer individuals who are your workspace? Whatever it is, workspace, still not there, you are employed. But how do we have the responsibility to protect them? So that kind of protection is not there. And the visibility, when we create a visibility space, only June month they have this space in the workspace. And what about other months? Only June month are we show our visibilities, or are we come out of visibility, our own identity? No, lifelong, our entire life we are living in our own identity. And other other than June month, no protections, no um, uh, they don't do anything. So this should be the IT, particularly the private company and the government sector. Still now, a lot of trans persons are fighting for the government employment. Here, we don't have a separate reservation for the trans people, and still now, a lot of trans persons are fighting for their employment rights and the reservation rights. Last year, for the first time in the country, 131 trans persons who are participated in the group 4 level examination, but nobody got selected. And recently, in particular in Tamil Nadu, a civil judge examination was conducted, and various minority groups, people are got the opportunity, they are selected. But in that civil judge examination exam also, one transfer, only one transfer, but without reservation, right? Had opportunity denied. Yeah.
So we conducted a massive RTI study, file applications under Right to Information Act, went over 2021 and 2022. And we actually saw that after NALSA, so 2014, so NALSA versus Union of India judgment. So of these 128, majority of institutions were science institutions. So you would have IITs, NITs, medical institutions, etc. TIFRs, etc. But there were also some state and central universities. So this is a comment on the education system largely. But we saw that of the institutions that responded to the RTI application, numbers were 60 to 75. Only 10 institutions reported having transgender students apply, and the total number came to about 270 applications. Then we asked of these applications, how many students were actually selected? How many of them made into admissions? And only 10 out of 270 actually made admissions, and all of this happened in one institution. And then we asked how many of them graduated, and only 1 out of 10 seems to have graduated. I understand that the graduation metric is not reliable in the sense that people might have been pursuing the degree, therefore not graduated. But the numbers are very poor. They're abysmal. This was also
As far as private companies and similar organizations, non-governmental organizations are concerned. I think I have a lot of experience with the free software domain, especially things like Ubuntu, the Free Software Foundation. They have been implemented number of policies for reducing the users that they have. And we also implemented policies for conference and policies for interaction on the mailing list. And all these have to be inclusive and that really helped to improve the figures over time. That is what the data shows. The plenty of papers on this, including when I have written one paper on that, related to statistics and things really have improved with the free software movement and related and associated companies also. So that I think is somewhat positive. But we have already about reservation as such. Because it was mostly really this that's how but it's not the whole world and not just this place. And because you can many people conduct sensitization programs, including lifetime rectification for the Linux users. That definitely yeah, as far as yeah, so maintaining horizontal reservation is absolutely essential. Without that, I don't think we would have diversity, we would have trans, we would trade on both terms and purpose looking at the results of those things. But I don't think there's nothing else there. Nothing else there for the doing the that's the truth.
I can, the workspace when we talk about deployment opportunity, as I mentioned, from 2013, NASA 2014 to 2024, 10 years, in Tamil Nadu we have only 9 government employees, advanced employees. But after the 2020, Karnataka government they passed the Kalkana reservation, and after they got the reservation rights from 2020 they passed and 2021, 2021 because this 3 year they have 9 government employees, and two doctors and other four or three constables and so yeah, like that. And so these are the statistics. Within 2 years, they have 9 employees, but we have 10 years, we have only nine, very, only 9 employees. And every government examination, a lot of transfers, but they're all combined. As I said, last year, 131 transfers. This year, the recently the group examination happening, we expect around 300 transfers. Well, they are going to come. But what else next? And this is government side. And the private side, private sector, the private institutions, the private companies, they are higher the funds employers, but they don't have a safe space. And what else? A transport for the end, and they want to earn money and they want to do surgery. If they are employed, they are employed, or they get uh, uh, leave, the medical leave with salary. No, they didn't get. They are having, if I want to change my gender, surgery as surgery, any therapy. So definitely, I should be. It's like with salary only they are getting. Without salary, uh, they are getting leave. So that is the definitely so many years I demanded the works it should be give a the maternity leave for the women, and the same leave they should be provided for the trans who wants to do the medical transition, the medical leave, the medical therapy. That's not happen. And the working hours, when we identify our own identity, so immediately they will increase our working hours. So they are putting so many work on their head. I mean, the person's for identity. So this kind of workspace discrimination, the player on transfers are facing. So that is how we are protecting. I mean, the protection we don't have. So the workspace should be a safe space A and should be protect trans and
I think that has given us all a lot of food for thought. So I think we'll open the floor now to audience questions. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question?
Why do they add more working hours? How do they justify it to people who are coming out in the workplace? I mean, I understand that it is a way of discriminating against
yeah.
but they just, they just don't.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, for me, for example, when I work with some programmer, so that time when I identify myself as a trans, immediately my MD they depromote my position and they put me into the customer support, and I started my transition and I took my hormone and it should be the femininity, all this, my whole body is showing my, it's completely looking like femininity. And they put me in the customer support and the customer side, all the people are cis people and the transport week and the transport people, they did a lot of discrimination and they increase my working hours. And I don't even have a, raise my voice against, and immediately they'll say, you people don't have the opportunity. I created this opportunity. So if you deny this, so definitely you don't get any job anywhere. And if we oppose them, definitely they are, they have the power. They are definitely putting our working experience certificate and lot of remarks they will do. So this is how they are targeting the people. They are increasing our work hours and they're like, and this is one thing directly they are discriminating, and sometimes indirectly they are discriminating. Hey, this staff got leave, and you should be do this work. The friendly approach, the friendly discrimination. So that is also discrimination. Discrimination is discrimination. So that is also happening. So we should be say, and being an employer, we should be know what is our rights. And if any rights we are denying, we should be raise our voice against that. So that is it's not happening. And sometimes when when we face violence and discrimination, even sexual harassment within our own colleagues, so we don't have a safe space to expose or express our feelings. And so that kind of space. Any workspace, there are a lot of companies says, we have a cell, we have a anti-discriminatory cell, and we have this number, that number, whatever, to protect individuals for facing that discrimination. And who are all in that panel, I mean that cell. Again, what about some harasser in that cell? Definitely all the people are supporting those things. That one protects individual. So So that is an equality, but here it's not happening.
No, there are not enough policies.
Any other question?
Yes, so when we look at this spirituality, right, it kind of correlates a lot with how slaves were, for example, not given the right to study or something. First, you deny the right to get education, and um, then you say that, yeah, you are wrong because of this reason. Even the and they were like, you know what? Just because we have the, you know, something, for example, the personal experience of mine was I went to this is unnatural because of some reason. Being from an engineering background, okay, I had some amount of knowledge that you know I could. But then when I think about so many different people, transgender people who are not even given the right to go and get education, what about that? Like, how are they supposed to counter such people? And also at the end of the day, like Baseman said, that there should be like a manual or something. What is that going to do? At the end of the day, it's a straight person seeing just a manual, uh, how to like behave as a pure person. Okay, this is what it means. This is what going people go through. So manual in itself, I don't, yeah, that is a good step. Like manual, yeah, yeah, that's it. Okay. So see, I mean, you're of course right in identifying understanding things. And that is not a slogan for that is for all of us. Um, thing about manual is that there's no manual to be a nice person. I can't give you a manual and say this is how you become a nice person. What I think, but at the same time, what we've been advocating for are policies. And when I say policies, what I mean is policies that so policies that a have an anti-discrimination component to them. What that means is they prevent people from getting discriminated, and they have affirmative action. So what that means is they also offer certain processes through which people to exist. That doesn't mean that the oppression around them is going to vanish. We've also been asking in the past couple of years that policy should be reflexive. What it means is that able to read policies and modify them frequently because no single policy can address the demands of every single queer person. So what we need to do is have a flexible set of policies that you can rely on. And you can modify through stakeholder consultations. You can then use for these keep some institutional safeguards. It is like you rightly recognized, only one of the several things that need to happen.
So, as you said, as conversation, the conversation people again reject everything, and as you said, rituals, something spiritually, person therapy.
This is this is actually I'm really sorry. But see, I actually conversation question is this. And that's a question that I raise with science. Every National Scientific Temper Day, around the National Science Day, you have open houses, you have this, that, etc., etc. But should review people racism is unscientific. Starts in like 1950, long back. So, but that is not a conversation. We keep on talking about Nehru, 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 Nehru. But what, sure, no issues with Nehru per se, but what about the Ambedkarite discourses in science? Or what about the fact that trans people have specific demands that they make? Our bodies are apparently going to be reshaped and transformed and aligned with our gender through science. And yet that remains entirely inaccessible to a majority of queer and trans people in the country. Yeah, it's very important point.
I would like you to elaborate a bit about the infrastructure thing that you had stated, and also how would you answer critics? For example, if my parents were aware that I was living in a non-gender segregated hostel, they would be very uh, like reluctant to send me here. So how would you answer parents like that?
So, and the worst part is that the Indian government will not charge the parents to this kind of things. There is no law to except before it is exploited by this. So,
So there are a couple of things that we hear. For instance, parents. The way I try to think about it is what if a group of parents and say to a doctor who wants, I practice my question. My things that your family will not like. You will not like, but you will go through the institutional process. Like my mother did not like the fact that I in SU was having sambar rice the entire, 3 times a day. That's because I come from a Bengali family. That doesn't matter. Point is, if it's an institutional process and I have to come into SU to study, then I have to make peace with the fact that I'm going to have sambar rice. So one thing is that okay, um, the second thing actually is I know that this comes as a concern, but I have actually never heard a single instance from institutions that have gender neutral hostels. So for instance, Nalsa, University of Law, is I know that either Kolkata has instituted some kind of gender neutral accommodation. Um, Not once have we heard a single parent actually raise an objection. This is a this is a concern that we keep hearing from the administration. They say, "Oh, parents will stop sending their children to school." But to my knowledge, there's not been a single instance where a parent has come and said, "I'll not send my child to school." The thing is that there is an alternative infrastructure. You're welcome to stay in the gender segregated infrastructure, but as an adult, you should be able to choose after coming to the institution that no, I want to now move to the gender not segregated infrastructure, and your parents should have nothing to do. If your parents have something to do with it, then maybe tell your parents that, hello, this is an institution that you have to have the message. Just try to follow hostel policies, library policies, classroom policies, uniform code, whatever else there is. You also have to follow the rule that there is an option for people to choose gender non-segregated.
In the interest of time, that will be the last question that we're taking. Thank you so much to Professor Professor joining us today and sharing their experience. It's been very insightful. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone. I think it's very insightful. Thank you so much for that.
And I invite representatives from the Banu team to present a vote of thanks. I like it. I think you all like it. Thank you. I invite thank you very much. Oh, are you okay? No, no, no.
Thank you for attending the panel discussion. We have, yeah, the next panel is starting at 3.